afraid of no ghosts. I ain't afraid of no ghosts. Who you gonna call?
Ghostbusters! All right, welcome back to the 16th episode of the Game or Die podcast. I am your host, Ryan Moore. Thank you very much for listening today. And today I'm going to kick off kind of this season of the year. It's Halloween time, and I used to not celebrate, but I used to get into the festivities of Halloween all the time when I was younger. We'd always do a lot of parties and stuff like that. I remember when I was in high school, I threw a lot of Halloween parties for school and things like that. And I went to like a private school, so it was a lot smaller than throwing like a gigantic rager of a high school party. You know what, parents are out of town or something like that. But I did throw Halloween parties here and there, and they were fun. And I always liked dressing up because I always got to do something goofy. And I never really tried to do the crazy costumes or anything like that, but I did have a lot of fun dressing up. I always used to do a costume, sometimes with my friend Sam and my friend Eric. One year he went as Steve Zissou from the Bill Murray movie Steve Zissou, Life Aquatic. And I liked dressing up, but as the years went on, as I got older, I just stopped caring. You know, it was just one of those things where it was like, I don't really need to do this. There's no reason for me to do this, and I don't really put forth the effort, and I don't care about it as much. So I just kind of stopped doing it. But one thing that I liked doing a lot was every year around this time, Knott's Berry Farm would transform into Knott's Scary Farm, and they would put on their Halloween hunt. And this event lasts from like late September to November, like 1st or 2nd. And it's just a really fun time to go to Knott's Berry Farm, a theme park, and they have scare zones. So they have all these people who scare people, you know, dress up as maniacs and try and just run around and jump out of the fog and stuff and scare you. And as a younger person, I really, really thought that was just awesome. And what was really cool is my cousins all lived in that area. And so every year they would actually get hired on as scare actors. And they would just love it. They would, you know, the hours were crazy for an entire month, roughly. You know, you would basically have this schedule where you started work at like 6 o'clock and then in the evening and wouldn't stop until like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning for an entire month. And it messes around with your sleep schedule and all this stuff. And I actually almost went and got hired one year. I actually went to the auditions with my cousins, but I lived kind of far away. I lived in Rancho Cucamonga, and it was too far of a drive to do that and be exhausted at like 2 o'clock in the morning and then have to drive all the way back home. My cousins were like, oh, you can stay with us. But I just kind of hate sleeping at other people's houses. I've never felt comfortable, you know? So I never really wanted to do that. And especially doing that for like an entire month, it was just like, I have a job and stuff like this that where I kind of had to show up, and I couldn't just take a month off to go be some crazy clown chasing people down with a chainsaw in a theme park. But I always loved the event because what they do is they do mazes. And there are these little fun houses or haunted houses or whatever you want to call them, where you stand in line, and they have about 8 or 9 usually per year. And you walk around and they deck these areas out, and they spend months planning and designing these intricate mazes where you're just walking through and you're looking at the theming of everything, and people jump out and try and scare you and stuff. And it's a blast, to be completely honest. I've always loved the mazes. I don't really care too much about the rides. I've been on those rides millions of times throughout my life. So the rides aren't really the draw, nor are the scare zones, because I'm older. I don't get scared by that stuff. Yeah, jump scare, would definitely make me jump a little bit. But, other than that, I'm not scared. But it is fun watching, the teenage girls all in a group and stuff like that and get freaked out by these people running and sliding stuff. So I love the atmosphere. You're going in at a theme park, late at night. You're all there all night long. It's creepy. It's eerie. There's crazy, weird music going on. Just the ambiance of that theme park, which is what they're supposed to be doing, right? It's a theme park, and they go all out, man. The theming of these places are just incredible. So I wanted to do this, and I haven't gone for several years. I think since like maybe 2012, maybe 13, 11 or 2011 or 12, I believe, was the last time I went. And I went with my cousins who, again, used to work there and stuff like that. And it's a blast. So I wanted to go, and I had no idea how I would get to go because, again, I got to live kind of far away. I live about an hour and a half, 2 hours almost away from Knott's Berry Farm. And just to go drive there, for a night. And also, my wife is not really into that stuff. She does not like scary things. She doesn't like Halloween. And, that's great. That's fine because we don't celebrate Halloween or anything like that. We just, have a relaxing night at home. We don't do trick-or-treaters or anything like that. So I never really felt like I was missing out, but it was like, I would like to do this. And I knew she was going to be gone. She's actually in Israel right now on a fantastic trip. And so I'm sitting here going, man, I would like to go, but I have no one to go with. And that's a very like social group environment. You don't want to go by yourself. I did not want to be the creepy weirdo walking around by myself, in these mazes. That's not really that fun. So I needed to go with someone. And I thought about my nephew. His name's Daniel, and he's a little bit younger. He can't drive or anything. So he's never gone to one of these events before. And I was like, man, that would be really fun to go with him and see him experience this stuff for the first time. And then I get to be the cool uncle taking him to all this weird, crazy Halloween crap, at a theme park. So I pitched the idea, it flew, and we went to Knott's Berry Farm just 1 week ago on the 13th. And it was a blast. They had 9 mazes this year. And the first one, we got there about half an hour before the park opened for the event. They basically close off part of the park and get everything ready. And then you can go into the park at 7 o'clock at night. And that's when the event starts. And it ends at 1 o'clock in the morning. So we walk around. We get to the first maze. The first maze is it's called Dark Ride. And for a theme park, that's kind of quote unquote insider, I guess, where a lot of the theme rides at theme parks are called dark rides when they're enclosed. You get in a ride vehicle of some sort. If you want to think about like the Haunted Mansion or Pirates of the Caribbean or, Pinocchio or Snow White or Peter Pan, all those rides are dark rides. You're in a building, you're in a confined area, like a vehicle, and it takes you through this story that they've crafted. So this one's called Dark Ride, and we basically walk through the maze, and it's like, it's themed like a ride, but it broke down and it's being taken over by, crazy psychopaths and the rides have come alive. Kind of, it had a resemblance to the Five Nights at Freddy's games a little bit. There was animatronics that were people were dressed up as animatronics trying to scare you and act like they're they're just like robots or whatever, and then they leap out at you and try and scare you and stuff. And so he really, really liked that one. We went to the next one, which was called Shadowlands, and I guess it was something they've done several years, but I haven't been there in several years. So this was the last time that they were going to do it, was this year. And it's Japanese themed, you got like the bamboo sticks and the just all that, the paper door, when you think of like Tokyo and you think of homes and they have the sliding paper doors and stuff like that. They had all that cool stuff, and they had ninja warriors and people using swords trying to slash out at you. It was just a really fun time. So we did that, and we did everything that we could in the amount of time. Unfortunately, there's so much stuff to do. You can't cram it all into that 7 to 1 hour window. And especially when you have lines. The lines at the very beginning of the night weren't bad at all, but oh boy, they got long. There was points where it was at 30 minutes, and it was actually 55, 60-minute long line. And then there was one that said 45 minutes, and that was about an hour long. And, we spent a lot of time later on in the evening standing in lines. We watched The Hanging, which is their stunt show that they do every year, where it's a lot of pop culture references and stuff like that. And then at the end of the night, we went on a couple rides, went and did as many mazes as we could, and we did 8 out of 9, which not bad, especially if we got rides in there as well. So we did almost every single one of the mazes except for one, and we just could not. We were tired of sitting. It's about 15 minutes before the park closes, and I think it was maybe about 20 minutes before the park closes. And we knew we were not going to be able to get on in that line and go through the maze in that short amount of time. So we actually decided to take in another show instead of doing a maze. And we were walking by the Birdcage Theater, and I'd never actually been in there, which was really fun for me because I remember, anytime I go to Knott's Berry Farm, they have this place called the Birdcage Theater, and it's always closed off. You can never go in it for one reason or another. Maybe it's a VIP event or a party or a social gathering, or, rented out for corporate events or whatever it is. But it's never been open in the tons and tons of times that I've been there. So there's this lady going, "Hey, last call for this show of the night. If you want to watch this show, come on in, last call." And we were tired of walking. Our legs are sore, our feet are sore. And we were like, you know what, let's watch this show. Because he wanted to see some of the shows too. After he watched The Hanging, he was like, "I like these shows, and they're really funny and cool. And I didn't know that they were going to do stuff like that." So we did some rides, we did some mazes, and we did some shows. So we kind of did everything that the park had to offer. Not everything, but we did most of everything that the park had to offer. So we go to this show, and it's a magic show. But the guy actually did a really good job. It was like a corny magician type of show where he's goofing off, cracking jokes the entire time. He's not doing magic to go, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy. How would they know?" Except for his last trick. His last trick was kind of pretty good. And the dude looked like Patton Oswalt, which was pretty cool too. But he was really funny, and we had a blast together. And that night, man, I was exhausted. I haven't walked around a theme park that late at night for that long, in a good long while. And so I dropped him off. And by the time I dropped him off at his house, it was 4:00 in the morning. Or like 3:30, somewhere around there. I didn't get home until darn near 5, maybe 5:30, almost. And so I was just wiped out. And it messed up my sleep schedule for sure. But it was a blast, and it was something that just I'll never, ever forget. And so that kind of put me in the Halloween mood, I guess you would say. And with that, I'm like, man, I do enjoy the occasional creepy thing, the occasional Halloween spooky movie, but it's more that I like the ideas behind them. I don't like scary movies. I don't like torture porn movies, like Saw or Hostel or anything like that. But classic cinema, there's something to those movies that I appreciate. I don't like watching them. They freak me out and they give me a lot of nightmares, but I appreciate the design. My cousins, they got me into film and they worked on a movie and they're still someday hopefully going to finish it. But there's this movie that they've been working on called The Great American Bee Movie. And in it, it has a axe-wielding murderer and stuff like that. Just making this movie when we were younger and watching them pour their hearts and souls into the special effects and doing all this stuff and watching behind the scenes documentaries and listening to podcasts of actual filmmakers and talking about special effects over the years. Like I really have a love for the understanding of how those effects work. I might not like them, but the movies themselves, but I appreciate the dedication and the work to go into these movies of creating people's faces, melting and stuff like that, and Raiders. So I've been kind of watching Cinemassacre's Monster Madness. Every year, James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd guy, he does Monster Movie Madness stuff. And he kind of recaps old movies, old horror movies and stuff like that. And he's done it for like the last decade or so and put up little YouTube videos, every day in October, or, certain days in October, kind of recapping famous franchises. And it's pretty interesting, but I don't think he does a very good job recapping this stuff. He kind of goes off the cuff and doesn't really delve deep into it. And he's not, unfortunately, he's not a very good actor. He sounds like he's reading a script a lot of the time. And you can just straight up tell, like, you put some emphasis into this stuff. Talk like you like it, not like you're reading a script. But I have a massive respect for the guy. He's done very well for himself for doing Angry Video Game Nerd, getting video games on YouTube in a very prominent way. I remember even working at Games for You, I'd have kids come up, and this is back in 2009, just a few years after YouTube really kind of caught on. And kids would go, "Oh my gosh, have you seen the YouTube guy, the Angry Video Game Nerd?" I'm like, yeah, I've seen it. I know. I don't like that stuff. I think he's got a very crass sense of humor for the most part. But like I said, his monster stuff is actually pretty informative, I guess. So I've been watching a lot of that stuff late at night for whatever stupid reason, kind of freaking myself out and giving myself nightmares. There is a excellent behind the scenes featurette on both the Nightmare on Elm Street series and the Friday the 13th series. And the Friday the 13th series, I remember the name of it. It's called Camp Crystal Lake Memories, which is like 4 or 5 hours long. I want to say maybe even 7. But it is a behind the scenes documentary look on every single Friday the 13th movie. And it's hosted by Corey Feldman because he's in those movies. And it's a really fascinating documentary on the making of those movies in the late 70s, early 80s, even into the 90s. And man, it is so stinking good. The Nightmare on Elm Street one is very good too. I can't remember the name of it, but when I watch those, unfortunately, even though they're behind the scenes documentaries, I get nightmares. And so I have a love-hate relationship with those types of movies and things like that. So I've been watching a lot of those, and there's a movie that I've been wanting to watch because I've heard it was so good. And it's a movie that came out last year, and it was called Mandy, and it stars Nicolas Cage. And I just remember when it came out, there was 2 reasons why I remember it. And one of the reasons is because it was Nicolas Cage and everyone is just raving about this movie. The other reason was because of the format they released it in. Basically, it was an independent movie made by Legion, which is, I guess, like Kevin Smith is like kind of pushing it hard now, where it's kind of like Fig and Kickstarter, where you're an investor in this project. And so you can back and invest in movies and actually get a kickback, I'm assuming, if you invest a certain amount of money for it. But I haven't done any research. I just remember hearing that it was a kind of quote unquote Kickstarter movie, a Legion movie. And it's an independent movie. It went to Sundance, and then it got a limited release in the US in theaters. But the cool thing is, it wasn't just a limited release in theaters. Literally the next day, the day after it premiered in theaters, it was available to buy online. And I went, whoa, what? That is how you do movies. I hate the movie theater experience. It's well documented for that fact. How much I hate going to the movie theaters. I have a horrible time every single time I try and go to a movie theater for one reason or another. One of the reasons is you can't, you're on their time. You have to abide by their rule sets. Oh, this theater is blocked off. Oh, it's sold out. Oh, you picked these seats out. People are sitting in them. It's always a hassle for me to go see a movie in the movie theater. So if I could wait one day and just pay to see it in the comfort of my own stinking house on my projector and my sound system and pause the movie as soon as I want, if I need to just quickly go to the bathroom, or if I want to get a snack, or if I want to make dinner in the middle of it and have it on the background, whatever I want, I can do it without having to wait several months for it to come out on the internet and download it that way. So I thought it was a spectacular way of distributing this movie. That is why that movie always stuck out to me. But I heard just absolutely amazing things. Oh, Mandy's so good. You got to see it. You got to see it. You got to see it. So I knew it was going to be a movie. I kind of heard through osmosis, and I think I looked it up even, a little bit after the movie came out or whatever, and kind of got the plot of it, the synopsis of Nicolas Cage, his girlfriend dies and he gets revenge. That's that movie in a nutshell. So I've been wanting to watch this for a long time, and I just never had the chance to do it where I wanted to be comfortable. I want to sit down. I want to watch it on a projector and just be fully enveloped in this quote unquote awesome movie. Opportunity never really presented itself, or I was never in the mood to. Again, why I hate the movie theaters, because I'm just not in the mood to see movies most of the time. It's a very specific time when I want to. And it's very rare for me to want to sit down and invest several hours in a movie. So, like I said, my wife's gone in Israel. I'm home alone for like 2 weeks. So this is the perfect, I know it's a little bit horror-esque in its genre, but it's also action because he just murders a bunch of people apparently. So I go, you know what? It's late at night, but not too late to where I'm going to get nightmares, hopefully. So I sat down and I watched this movie, and man, this movie, whoo boy. So this movie, I kind of wrote it up. If you want to see my, actual thoughts on it, go check out gameordie.net and look up my review for it. I'll quickly recap my thoughts because I don't want to spend too much time on it. But this movie is basically Easy Rider, the modern day version of Easy Rider. And I don't like Easy Rider. I don't think it's a very good movie. I remember as a kid hearing about it. I remember there was a Snoopy. There was a Charlie Brown movie called Come Back Charlie Brown or Come Back Snoopy, something along the lines of that. It's the one where they go to a summer camp and they have this water race or this boat race. And it's always where I got, we're number one, because the bad guys of that film, the bad kids, the bullies in that movie, keep yelling that to Charlie Brown and Lucy and Linus and Peppermint Patty and all the Peanuts gang. They're in one boat, and Snoopy and Woodstock are in another. And they do this boat race, and Snoopy and Woodstock are in like a little inner tube, and they float down the river and all this stuff. And hilarity ensues, and it's a really, really good movie. But I remember Easy Rider because that was the first time I watched this movie when I was a kid, like 4 years old maybe. And at the end, Snoopy gets on a motorcycle and rides away. And they do this weird credit sequence where it's a lot of pastel colors and, the music's really good in it. And just Snoopy's riding this just amazing looking rad motorcycle with, leaning back and a big sissy bar and, not ape hanger handlebars, but like kind of big handlebars. And, the fork for the front wheel is just super long. The bike looks rad. So I remember seeing this, and my dad, as a young kid, would tell me, oh, it's based on Easy Rider. And growing up, I never knew what Easy Rider was. I just knew it was a motorcycle movie. When I was a little bit older, I rented Easy Rider from Blockbuster, I believe. And I watched it, and I don't like Easy Rider. I think it's an acid trip of a movie. It's basically was filmed, and if you actually look up, the making of and listen to like, Coppola, I believe, directed it. I'm pretty sure he did. But talking about Easy Rider and all that stuff, like it just the massive amounts of the drugs that everyone was taking, and just the way the film's shot and cut and edited. It's just basically an excuse for an acid trip type movie. And I really hate the ending too. It's just such a downer ending. So Easy Rider is an acid trip type movie. And that's what Mandy is. For the first over hour of this movie is just like, I almost turned it off several times. I can sit through slow burn movies. I like them when they're done well. This, unfortunately, has really nothing going for it for the first hour. It's trying to be stylized and artistic, and I'll give, people that when they're trying to do something different. But man, this movie really tries your patience, unfortunately. And even with the setup and in the very beginning of the movie, you're like, all right, cool. I'm getting set up for this movie. It's a solid 30 minutes before you go, what is happening? Why am I watching this? Because I feel like I'm just watching people live their lives, but in a very uninteresting way. It's shot super slowly. There is very, very little dialogue. The dialogue that is there is of no consequence. It's pointless. It's just a waste of your time. And unfortunately, the movie doesn't even pick up until literally over an hour into it. And it's just a slow burn for no reason. If they did what they should have done in that first hour of that movie, the movie would have been a billion times better. And this is what I'll say without really spoiling the movie, because I don't really think you can spoil this movie. If you want to watch Mandy, after everything that I'm saying, if you go, man, that movie kind of sounds interesting, literally, just don't even watch the first hour. Start at the hour mark, right around when they get kidnapped. And that's where the movie picks up. And it's literally an hour in. The first hour, you can't even miss anything because there's nothing that happens, really. Basically, I'll recap the first hour of this movie in excruciating detail for you because, you'll see. So Nicolas Cage and his girlfriend live together in a secluded area in the mountains, where they have to get helicoptered in to do his job, basically. So they live in the mountains. He gets helicoptered in to be a logger, basically, like a lumberjack. So Nicolas Cage is a lumberjack. They live secluded in the mountains. in a very small town. And there's these weirdo Jesus freak cult people that drive around and take drugs, basically. And so they basically show up in the middle of the night to kidnap and drug Nicolas Cage's girlfriend. And they drug her with some LSD, and she like trips out, and the whole film, or this part of the film has like a very acid trip, tripping on LSD drug sequence where she laughs and offends the cult leader. The cult leader freaks out and murders her in front of Nicolas Cage. Nicolas Cage is tied up and he watches his girlfriend die. That's literally the first hour of the movie. It's super slow. It doesn't explain anything. It doesn't give any character names or motivations or anything up until that point. So if you skip the first hour, you literally miss nothing other than knowing Nicolas Cage has a girlfriend and there's these weirdo cult leader, Jesus freak type people. Once that happens, when his girlfriend gets murdered, he goes insane. They just leave him there to watch his girlfriend basically die in front of him, and he can't do anything. And it's a horrible way to die too. He freaks out, and this is where the movie kicks into high gear. There's a 2-minute shot of him just freaking out, not like just being basically destroyed as a human being. He just watched his girlfriend get tortured and murdered in front of him, and he's being held captive and tortured as well and beaten. And these people are just kind of laughing while it happens. So he goes into his house after his girlfriend died, and she's dead. She ain't coming back. There's literally no way she can come back. And he just doesn't know what to do. He has no idea how to feel or act. He's just destroyed as a human being. So he goes into his bathroom and he pulls out a bottle of vodka, like a Grey Goose bottle of vodka, and just starts chugging it while laughing and crying at the same time, like just hysterical, just in hysterics, really. And this is where you get like classic Nick Cage that everyone thinks of, like that type of acting, just freak out, weirdo, what is he doing type of acting. And he's perfect at it. And you go, yeah, obviously this dude is just watched a horrible, horrible thing happen. And he has no idea how to feel. So he's freaking out. And you just watch this man freak out for 2 minutes straight. The camera doesn't cut. It doesn't really move, except for there's some weird little camera movements. And I think it's just because the director and the camera operator were watching this performance and not knowing what to do or feel. And so they're kind of giggling or kind of just watching in this raw performance mode of Nicolas Cage. And it's wild. And it's a really honestly good way. It's a good show of how Nicolas Cage can be a good actor in certain circumstances. I think he's decent at most things. There are obviously certain roles where he's not equipped for it or he does a bad job of it. But I think Nick Cage really does like acting and he wants to act, and maybe he's not best for some roles, but some roles he's perfect for. And I think this is a perfect role for him. So he freaks out. He chugs this whole bottle of vodka basically on the toilet. Like he's just sitting there in his underwear, just freaking out. And then he goes to his friend's motorhome. And this is where there's an exposition dump where the movie actually gets explained. So basically, there are these black motorcycle riders that inhabit the hills of this town. And there's been reports of truckers seeing them and messing around with them. And if they mess around with them or interfere with this biker gang that looks like demons, basically, like they're dressed in like black leather and, crazy helmets and just all this weird get-up stuff where they're trying to look like otherworldly, basically. Nick Cage basically talks to this guy, and this guy says, yeah, there's these crazy people. And basically, these cult leader people have a scientist that created some LSD, but this batch of LSD makes people crazy. And so this biker group basically gets this cult and the scientist to donate people and LSD to their cause, and they won't kill them. Basically, so it's like a 2-minute long exposition dump where this could have, and this is where I have the issue with the movie. This is the whole first hour of this movie could have been setting this up. Don't just tell me about it. Show me it. Show me the truckers being murdered for interfering with these biker gangs. Show me that they abduct people and murder them, and that the cult is some crazy LSD-driven scientific people and offer these sacrifices to this gang to not get killed or whatever. They don't show any of that. They just say it in a 2-minute long, scene in like kind of almost at the, 3/4 of the way of the movie. Then Nick Cage goes on a killing spree. He hunts down systematically these cult members and these biker gang people. And the biker gang people are just like very demonic looking, and the guttural sounds of their voices. You don't even really know that they're not demons until there's a shot where they show the eyes of this person, in the biker in this getup, and you think they're, because they just look like, just the camera work, the lighting, the angles, everything works into its favor to make it seem like these are not human beings. These are creatures from another dimension or whatever. They're demonic, but you realize that they're just people, and but they're super people because they're on this crazy LSD strain that gives them superhuman strength or whatever it is. I don't know. I didn't really get it because unfortunately the movie doesn't really tell you all that much. It's very not mystic. I don't think that's the right word, but they kind of omit a lot of information and never really explain it. So he systematically takes down every single biker, every single cult member, and the gore effects are very similar to 1980s horror. Jason and Freddy type of movies, special effects. So I watched that and I was just like, man, I was so ready to turn this movie off multiple times in that first hour. But once that first hour kicks in and is over, and the second part of that movie starts, it is balls to the wall, just insane. So if you like those types of gore fest movies or just crazy action murder movies or whatever, revenge movies, it's a pretty good one. But honestly, if I could just plead with anyone who wants to watch it, please skip the first hour. Don't even think, you know what, I can do that. I watch films, or, I can get through an hour. No, you can't. You can't. It is awful, and it's slow, and it doesn't make sense. It has no purpose to it. It serves no purpose. That movie could be a solid hour long, and it would be a much better film, unfortunately. So watch it if you want. I think it was pretty fantastic. And the music is good. The lighting, it's got this weird, neon pink and red and purple glow and hue to that, film stock. And it's just, it is insane. The music's really good. Too. It's very metal and synth based. A lot of people say like that movie is basically like if a Megadeth album cover came alive. I guess I kind of agree. The end of it is definitely, for sure. But man, there's something about that movie that is weird and interesting for sure. So that's my thoughts on Mandy and just the Halloween season. I don't celebrate it or anything like that, but every few years there's the crispness to the air when it gets really cold, it's dropping into the 30s here in the mountains. And so it's kind of fun to just have the wind howling because it's been very windy and just sit down and watch a movie that I normally don't like, but the time is right for it. So that is my stuff. I'm going to switch over in just a second to talk about some video games that I've been playing and some other TV and movies and things like that I've been watching. So I'm going to leave you guys with a little interlude from the soundtrack of Mandy. So before I get back into it, the movie that I was trying to think of is called Race for Your Life, Charlie Brown. Go look it up. It's a rad movie. It's an old 1970, I want to say 6 or 7 movie where, Charlie Brown goes off in, it's basically a summer camp. and he's trying to be a leader and all this stuff. And Snoopy rides that rad motorcycle, and it's a really cool movie. I love Snoopy. So I have been playing a lot of games lately. And one thing that I've been playing, I was playing with my wife, and we've been on and off playing the Legend of Zelda games. We started on our honeymoon with A Link to the Past, and it's just something that we both really love playing. So on our honeymoon, we started playing through A Link to the Past, which I played before, but I never really got into it. I've loved the Zelda games. My friend Andrew was really into Zelda Link to the Past. And I remember playing the first one on NES, never really got into it. Played a little bit of Link to the Past. Andrew loved it, but I just did not care for it all that much. But once Ocarina of Time came out, that's when I got into that series. And I bought it the first day. I bought it day one, launch day. My mom actually let me take the day off of school, and we drove to Target. As soon as Target opened, I was the first one. I ran all the way to the back of the store where the 64 games were, and I was able to purchase the Ocarina of Time and then go home and play it. So that was a really, really fun game. It got me super into Zelda, but one game that I've always kind of hated was Majora's Mask. And for various reasons. To me, Majora's Mask felt like an offshoot. It didn't feel like a real Zelda game when it came out. I remember it being touted as a sequel to this game, Ocarina of Time, which I loved, and I was all for it, but when I started playing it, it felt totally different. Even though like the core gameplay mechanics and everything are so similar to Ocarina of Time, I remember playing it and just hating it. Hating that game. And I put it down, and I barely got into that game when it first came out. And so several years later, Wind Waker was coming out, and I got the special edition with the Master Quest game, and that made me play through Ocarina of Time again. And then I was like, well, maybe I should play Majora's Mask. So I tried playing Majora's Mask again, and I just hated it. Half an hour into the game, I just wanted to throw it out the window. And this happened throughout my life up until semi-recently, within the last year and a half or so, where basically I would start Majora's Mask trying to go into it with a clear mindset, and really give it a shot, and just hating that game. So after we beat Ocarina of Time, after we beat Link to the Past, then we moved on to Ocarina of Time, and then we played through that, and then we moved on to Majora's Mask. And Majora's Mask kind of killed our momentum because I just hated that game so much. And it's a bummer too, because like I was really enjoying playing it with my wife, where she would, help me out with some of the puzzles and stuff like that. And it was a really fun co-op experience, teamwork, building our marriage through encountering these puzzles together and working through them as a team. So it was really fun, but just everything about that game became so monotonous and just rage-inducing to me, where everything seemed very obtuse. Going through the level design was just terrible compared to Ocarina of Time. Nothing felt like it should be where it was. And there's so many problems with that game, but we finally finished it. Unfortunately, it took us a year and a half of me just rage quitting that game. Just playing for like 15, 20 minutes and just almost screaming, I hate this game. I hate this game. It sucks, over and over again. So I would just drop it. I would rage quit out of the game and then not pick it up for several months. And this went on for about a year and a half until we finally just said, I said, I really want to just finish this game so we can move on to other games, because we played through Breath of the Wild and we loved that. And it's like, we want to keep continuing on through the series, but I just hated Majora's Mask so much. So several weeks ago, I was like, man, and she would always ask me, hey, you want to play Majora's Mask? You ready to finish it? Like, I know you want to move on. And she's just awesome about, trying to coerce me into doing something that I kind of hate, but she knows I'm going to like it at the end. So she's being, the voice of reason, basically. And we went through and we finally finished it a couple weeks ago. And there are some really good things in that game. I just think that there's some really bad things in that game that pull that game back to make it still, even though I finished it and I don't hate it as much as I did. I hated it with a passion before. There are some good things that game did. One of the things was the masks. That's the whole point of that game, is like the masks. There's multiple masks in Ocarina of Time, but you don't really get to use them all that much. They don't really serve a large purpose in that game, and so they kind of offshot it to Majora's Mask. And I think that's where the game shines. This game, Majora's Mask, has, the whole clockwork system, the 3 days, you have to reverse time, slow it down, and I think it's still a terrible game mechanic for the most part. But what it does really well is that every single person is basically on a timer. These devs basically crafted out lives for each character to live throughout that 3-day period. And so if you just follow one single person from day 1 to day 3, they have a strict route that they go through, and they do not deviate from it at all unless you interfere with it. And so it's kind of rad to see like that clockwork mechanic being played out throughout the 3 days, which is really, really cool because, the mailman has to deliver things at this time. A robbing happens at this time, in this part of the map. And so if you know where those things are taking place and when they take place, you can watch them happen and interfere with them and kind of change time. And it's kind of got a very Back to the Future-esque type of, don't mess with the time stream type of thing going on. It's actually really, really cool. So I do have like a better understanding of what that game was going for. I don't think it executes on it very well. I think there is a ton of really big glaring issues with that game. It's still my least favorite out of all the Zeldas. But knowing what I know now and being able to say, yes, I finally beat Majora's Mask after 20 freaking years, basically, I think I have a better understanding of what that game was trying to go for, and I do appreciate that. So we finally finished that, which was it was a slog. It was really hard to get through, but I'm glad we finished it because now, as soon as she gets back from Israel, we're going to play Wind Waker in HD. We're going to play the HD version because why wouldn't we? So I'm very excited about that because Wind Waker was a game that I bought a GameCube for. That was my system seller game when that system came out, because I remember when it came out and I had an Xbox at the time and a PlayStation 2 as well. And I was like, the GameCube seems very underpowered. It seems like it's the worst out of all 3 systems. I have the other 2. I'll get the 3rd one eventually, but I was just in no rush. I hated Mario Sunshine, and I'll talk about that at another time when that came out. But even when that system first came out, it didn't even have an actual Mario title as a launch title. It had Luigi's Mansion, which Luigi's Mansion is a very, very different game and just set the tone for what the GameCube really was. It was a weird system that it was always the worst out of all 3 of those systems, but it did have some really, really good, first party or even some third party titles. You had games like Resident Evil 4 or Eternal Darkness. Actually, some really mature games for a system that was straight up geared for children. So And just like with anything Nintendo, first party titles usually shine, everything else kind of gets filtered out. But there are some really good games on that system. It's just nothing really sold it to me until Wind Waker. And so I played Wind Waker, and I had some weird thing happened. I remember where I never finished it. I got really, really close. I think I got to the final battle, and I just never got to finish it for whatever reason. So I'm very excited to play through that and finally finish that game as well. So my wife is in Israel right now, and she comes back in, I think like maybe 4 or 5 days, somewhere around there. So the last basically week or two, I've been by myself. And I've been trying to figure out what the crap to play and watch, because I haven't really had anything really biting for my time. So there was one show that I've always wanted to watch, and it was a show on HBO called Deadwood in the mid-2000s, like 2003 to 2006, I believe. And I've always wanted to watch it. And I've actually tried several times. I remember when the show went off the air finally, and the next year I downloaded the full series, and I tried watching it, and I got to maybe about 15, 20 minutes in, and I was like, all right, Western, show, whatever. And a character came on, and this character is, if you don't know what Deadwood is, it's basically a Western TV show. In the late 1800s, and it deals with a real town in North or South Dakota, I can't remember, I think it's South Dakota, called Deadwood. And this town was notorious for basically not having law, where all the other towns had laws, but there was no sheriff, there was nothing in that town. So it was a very lawless town, and it's a real life town. And so the show basically kind of told how the town started up and, kind of went through the ages and how society kind of, moved towards a, more modern society with laws and lawmen and sheriffs and deputies and things like this. And it's all based in the Western era. So I've always wanted to watch it. And when I started watching it back in 2007, right after it went off the air, I got to a character called Calamity Jane. And if you know anything about Westerns, Calamity Jane's a real person, history. Then Calamity Jane's a real person. So I was like, man, this is really cool. I'm going to get to see all these people. Wild Bill Hickok is in there. And then the main characters in the shows are also real people based, mostly in real life. Obviously they're going to exaggerate some stuff and change some stuff, but these are all real people who lived, and there's now a show about them. So I was super excited. And then I watched the show, and Calamity Jane shows up, and she is just this. If you have any thought of what Calamity Jane would look like, how she would act and sound and talk, is very absolutely 180 degrees different than what I thought. And unfortunately, the way she talked, the way she just enunciated things, just a very terrible slur, to her speech patterns. I just hated her character with a passion, to the point where I just stopped watching. I couldn't even get through the first episode. Several years later, I tried again, when the Blu-rays came out, and I was like, oh man, I want to watch Deadwood. It's a Western show. I want to watch a Western. It was, I think, after Hell on Wheels aired its final season. And I was like, man, I want to watch another Western. So I loaded up Deadwood again. I could not get through it. The first episode, man, it was so rough. Timothy Olyphant is the quote-unquote main character. He's not actually really the main character because Ian McShane from the John Wick movies is more the main character than anything else. He has way more screen time. But, it's an HBO show, and it revolves around multiple characters, kind of like Game of Thrones or anything like that. And so these characters switch in and out of episodes, follows one more than the other sometimes. And the show just did not grab me multiple times while I tried to watch it. But this last time I was like, you know what? I've been playing a lot of Red Dead 1 last year before Red Dead 2 came out. I played through all of Red Dead 2 last year when that came out. I loved it. I love Westerns. Westerns are my favorite genre of film as well. I was just in a Western mood. So I said, screw this. I'm going to play Red Dead Redemption 2 online because on my birthday, and this will kind of mix into what I'm going to talk about next, is the online portion had an update. And so I've been playing Red Dead Online a bunch. And then I wanted to watch some Western stuff while I wasn't playing. So I loaded up Deadwood a final time, and I actually got all the way through the series. And luckily, the movie, Deadwood the movie, was just produced and released just several months ago. So I got to watch all 3 seasons of Deadwood and then watch the movie right afterwards. And I got to experience the whole thing in one go because I didn't have anyone else around. I could just kind of binge watch it all the way up until like 5 o'clock in the morning some nights. And I got through it in like 4 nights. So Deadwood, it's a very interesting show, but I wouldn't super recommend it unless you really like that type of stuff. I thought there was just a lot of unnecessary characters that they tried getting to, but nothing really ever materialized with their story arcs half the time. Something would happen and you just would never hear from them again. Unfortunately, too, because a new show came out much later, and that's Hell on Wheels, man, that show's by far so much better than what Deadwood was, that I can't really recommend Deadwood unless you've already watched Hell on Wheels. I'll talk about Hell on Wheels at some other point, but man, that is a good Western show. But Deadwood follows several main characters. The sheriff, now I'm blanking on his name, but Timothy Oliphant plays him. Ian McShane, which is the saloon director or owner and proprietor. And then you have Wild Bill and Calamity Jane and the sheriff's wife and their son. And there's so many characters in the show. But Wild Bill was the one that kind of hooked me. When Wild Bill shows up, there's this actual Western legend, on the show. And you kind of get to see, what his later years would look like and unfortunately how he died and things like that. And so once you get into the characters a little bit, the show actually does flow pretty well and you get really sucked into it. But I really enjoyed it for what it was, but the 3rd season unfortunately got canceled, all the way through. So the show got canceled. Season 3 ended on a cliffhanger and never got to resolve itself for 13 years, all the way up until 2019. Several months ago, they, like I said, released the movie. And unfortunately, I'd say, for me anyways, I didn't have to have that unanswered question of what the crap happened in season 3 because this is a little bit of a spoiler alert for season 3. Bad dude gets away. Nothing bad happens. You don't get any comeuppance to the bad guy in that season. They just get off scot-free and nothing gets resolved. And you just are left feeling very sorrowful and empty. Like, that's it. That's all that we get. And that's how the series ends. And it puts a really bad, sour note on the whole series by just having that series canceled at the end of season 3 and it never getting to wrap up the storyline. Kind of like Freaks and Geeks in a way. Freaks and Geeks is only 1 season long and it got canceled after its 1st season and it ends on a cliffhanger, but it's more of an upbeat cliffhanger so you can kind of, make up in your own mind how the characters, led the rest of their lives and, feel better. But man, Deadwood season 3 is just awful if that was the end of it. But luckily the movie came out. It ties everything up, kind of. It leaves a lot of questions open still. Or not questions, but the story open to figure out what happened, like some stuff does kind of get resolved, but not in the way that I wanted it to, especially if so far removed from the series, ended in 2006, it's 2019, you're making a movie, it picks up basically kind of where the show left off, it does pick up and go through all those unanswered kind of most of the plot points. Some people died in real life, so they couldn't resolve some of it. So you're just going, what happened to this character? And you have no idea other than the fact that they died in real life, so they couldn't film it. So I watched all of that, and the movie does kind of give some closure, but not all closure. It's not as much closure as I would have liked. So Deadwood is good, but watch it if you haven't watched if you have already watched Hell on Wheels, and if you've already watched Westwood. If you've watched those two shows, go ahead and watch Deadwood. It's decent. But like I was saying, one of the things that really captivated me over the last couple of weeks, while I've been kind of home alone babysitting all our animals, is Red Dead Online. So when Red Dead Redemption 2 came out last October, it was only the single player. And I loved that game. And luckily, time away has really made me appreciate it a lot more. So on my birthday, on September 10th, they did an online update because, like I said, it only launched single player and then online came out several months later. And unfortunately, there was basically really bad things to say about multiplayer. And I don't like multiplayer all that much anyways, but the single player, the online portion of the game just seemed like online portion like GTA. And I don't like GTA Online, but they released earlier this year the casino update in GTA where every day, if you log in, you can spin a wheel and get a chance to win money or rank up, some points to rank up XP, or you can win one of the nicer, newer cars. And so I did that, I kind of load on, and then there was a notification saying, hey, if you find all these playing cards, because it's a casino, so they do all the 52 playing cards. If you find all 52 playing cards, because it's a Rockstar game, it's going to link to Red Dead Online, and we will unlock special prizes in Red Dead. So I was like, yeah, okay. How long would that take? And I looked it up, and it was like an hour or two video where they collect all of them. I was like, you know what? I've got nothing else better to do. I'll do that. So I hopped in my flying DeLorean that I bought in GTA Online and flew around the map all night long and basically picked up all 52 playing cards that are just scattered throughout the entire world. And I unlocked some stuff in Red Dead Online. And I was like, well, I got to go unlock that stuff in online, so I might as well boot it up. And what was really cool is right after I booted it up, or right before I booted it up, a couple days prior, they had the whole like, hey, we're going to update this game to have a ton of new stuff. And apparently, there was nothing to do in that game before this update. So I loaded on that, I loaded up Red Dead Online. And I got all my, special unlocks and stuff like that as I booted up the game saying, hey, we gave you money. We gave you gold bars, which is like the real life currency. We gave you a bunch of in-game special items and blah, 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 blah. And I went, all right, cool. So I played around with it a little bit for like half hour, 45 minutes, just riding my horse around, get to my camp and, just kind of seeing what online was. And it just kind of felt like the single player game. And I was like, this is kind of cool. It's just the game, but now I have my own created character. And I can buy stuff and unlock a lot more costumes and all this stuff. So I was excited about that. And then with this new online update, they have this gypsy, Madame Nazar, and she moves around the map every day. So every single day, she moves to a different location in the map, and you got to go find her. When you go find her, they have 3 roles that they've created for this new online update. You have the collector role, the bounty hunter role, and the trader or hunter role. And the collector role, you go to Madame Nazar and you basically spend some gold bars for it. But because if you have Amazon Prime and Twitch, and this is where video games are just kind of getting crazy, they give you free stuff if you have that and you link your Twitch and Prime account to Rockstar's social service. So obviously I did that before, and I got the collector role for free. You kind of have to actually pay gold bars for it. And I already had a ton of gold bars from just updates and, just freebie giveaways and the GTA Online stuff. So I had this collector role that was basically unlocked as free. I didn't have to pay anything for it. So I took the collector role and it says, all right, here's a list of things to go find. And I went, oh boy. So now I just get to roam around this world again that I haven't spent any time in for a year and just go collect things. I love collecting things in video games. So I started playing it. I collected a few things and I was like, man, this is taking a while because you're on horseback. You got to go find all this stuff. And it was a blast. And I've been playing it for the last couple of weeks, kind of every day for, several hours. I stop a little bit and then play it again for several hours. And it's just, it is so fun. And then Rockstar announces that they're porting Red Dead 2 to PC. So we get unlocked frame rate, so more than 30 frames per second, which I can't wait for because that game looks fine. The game and the graphics look good, but man, consoles just hold back games like that. And it's such a bummer. We had to wait an entire year for this stinking game to get released. So it comes out on the 5th of November, which I'm really, really excited about, and I'll definitely remember that. And I really love Red Dead. I love that world. I think it's phenomenal. And being able to play online and not have to deal with a lot of online people. The world is so big, it takes so long to travel around that you don't really run into people all that much. And on Xbox, apparently, there's a really good community where most people don't really mess around with you. You see someone, they're running towards you. They just are trying to get somewhere else, too. They're on their own path. And as long as you don't mess with them, they're usually not going to mess with you. Unfortunately, and this is the last time I played, and this was 4 or 5 days ago at this point, I been doing bounty hunter roles. I've been doing some hunting roles, and I was like, man, I want to go fish a little bit. So I got my fishing rod, and I bought that, and just kind of unlocking stuff, buying stuff for my character, excited to get it on PC. So just kind of having all that stuff so I don't have to do it later on. And I was like, I want to go fish. So I found a really nice remote location all the way at the top of the map, and I started fishing. First time I've ever fished in that game, besides a single player. And I was like, this is kind of nice, And while I'm fishing, I see 2 guys come out from behind the waterfall where a collector thing is, because I already collected all that stuff, so I kind of know where some of that stuff is located. And I was like, yeah, that's where I was a few days ago collecting, this arrowhead or whatever it is. So they walk out and I'm like, I hope they don't mess around with me. And so I'm fishing and they're walking towards me still. They're walking towards me and they see me fishing and they pull out their fishing poles and start fishing too. And I was like, this is really cool. And so I'm fishing, I catch a fish, and I load up another piece of bait on my hook, I cast it out again, get another fish, and so on my third fish, I'm baiting it, I cast it out, and I'm cast it really far out. And I see a big splash, where my hook is, and I'm like, oh man, there's a big fish out there, I'm ready. And I'm all excited. And then my controller vibrates, and I thought it was the fish getting hooked onto, my hook. And unfortunately, my screen, backs out of the fishing thing. And this guy punches me, knocks me on the ground, and starts to tie me up and pick me up. And I'm like, oh, crap, these are just jerks. And so he's, taking me to the waterfall edge or whatever. And I'm trying to struggle, and I break free, and I punch him a couple of times, and I try and pull my gun out to shoot him. Like, dude, what the crap? We were all fishing. Everything was fine. And now you're going to be a jerk. Like, this is exactly why I hate, online games, because people are there just to screw around with you and cause trouble. And it's like, that's not fun. Like, how really? That's your idea of fun in a video game, is just making other people's lives miserable? Like, that sucks. So I was about to just quit out of the game, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to just try and see what I can do, because I've never encountered this before. And so I struggle, I break free, I punch him a couple of times, I try and shoot him, but he kills me. I'm like, all right, fine, whatever. I'm angry. I'm going to go get revenge really quick and be like, dude, what the crap? So I run up and I try and shoot him, and he kills me again. And I was like, man, because they're really high level and I'm very low level. Like, this is why I hate online video games, because stupid people think, oh, this is the funniest thing in the world. Like, wow, really? Your life suck that much that you just got to mess around with people who are just trying to have a fun time? So after he killed me again, like, they're sniping me and stuff like this. And so I run around way far away, and I'm going to get my sniper rifle out and snipe them. And then I saw their horse, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to steal their horse. And I couldn't steal their horse for whatever reason. So I shot their horse, thinking, dude, you screw around with me, I'm going to at least take out your horse, and you can use a horse reviver item, to bring them back, and then we'll be good, and I'll just walk away. A little bit of revenge, a little bit of justice and verification, and then I'm just gone. So I shoot his horse, I down it, I kill it basically, and then the game says, you've been fined $4 of in-game currency because you messed around with another player's horse. And I'm like, I didn't know that was a thing. I wouldn't have done it otherwise, but I was just trying to get revenge on someone who already did something crappy to me multiple times. So that was the last time I played. That was a few days ago. And I might just wait until the PC version comes along and then pick back up. But it was like, man, that kind of soured my experience on that game, because I was having a blast for the last couple of weeks until that happened. And then I was just like, ugh, one bad apple, man, ruins the whole game, and all the fun experiences just because someone sucks that much that they think they need to grief people. And for the record, I hate that term griefing, but it's kind of the nomenclature for, online play when someone does something like that. So that is kind of what I've been doing for the last couple of weeks. Been watching some stuff here and there, but nothing too spectacular. Been watching a lot of, like I said, retro reviews on horror movies and things like that. But I can't do more of it because it's just messing around with my mind. I'm having bad dreams again, stuff like that. So that is this episode of the Game or Die podcast. Thank you very much for listening. I have been your host, Ryan Moore. You can find me online at gameordie.net while I upload a lot of different articles, whether it's based on movies or TV or video games. And you can find me on Twitter at themadman007. And that's going to do it for this episode. Like I said, thank you for listening, and I will catch you next time.
It's a new day. We all can agree that let the sun shine.
It's brought to you absolutely free.
Free as running water, fresh as morning dew.
No matter who's the leader,
When the sun sets down, it is gone, Charlie Brown.
so race for your life
Take a chance, cause there's no second dance.
till it's a new day.
I'll tell you a secret, you're about to face a test, and you have to do your best. Don't forget,
Just remember,
just remember,
don't forget,
your life is free as running water, fresh as morning dew. No matter who's the winner,
if you try,
we're behind you,
Charlie Brown. Race for your life,
Charlie Brown,
race for your life,
Charlie Brown,
race for your life,
Charlie Brown,
race for your life.
Charlie Brown.